хорошо помню. Раз и как.
Dear friends, glad to meet you all on Feygin Live. It is 2 minutes past 10, Saturday, 14th of May, day 80 of this war. Again, we are here with Olexiy Arestovych, discussing recent news. Glad to see you. Likewise, glad to see you all. We have 150,000 people watching us live. As always, I do ask you to please share the links to this cast, subscribe to my channel, to Alexei's channel. If you're watching that in English, subscribe to the Privateer station. Also, do not forget to leave a like. That does help us to promote videos. So the question, as usual, what are the news? Anything destiny changing on the front? From the bright points, we have done a small counter attack on the Izum direction. Gotta be careful about giving names here because some people are already claiming a counteroffensive, and no, this is not that. So they Russians tried to circle us there, encircle or do something. So our troops stopped them and pushed them back and did a bit of a counterattack. And as a matter of fact, pushed them back and also captured new positions. So this is basically from the 4th of April. It's 70 or so days. Our troops stopped them in the direction of the main attack and pushed them back. And that means a huge transition or signs of a huge change in the direction of the main offensive. This is not a joke, really. And there is an old rumor that Viktor Suvorov described in one of his books about Second World War, that once on the Kursk Duga, on Kursk, one soldier calls his platoon commander and says, I observe a small fortification, yay wide and yay tall, about 650 yards away from our position. And they commanded further to lieutenant, reported to lieutenant. Lieutenant screams at them saying, do you understand what you're talking about? If that is not true, you'll be punished, you'll be court-martialed. So this little piece of news goes all the way up to Stalin. And then upon listening to that piece of news, he says, star of the hero of Soviet Union to that observer. So what I like to ask during my courses is, why was he given that award? So the answer to that would be that strip of fresh soil, strip of land, an extra fortification that the soldier saw. That means that the enemy army is trying to fortify themselves, that they're done attacking, they're looking to defend. And this is the first time this kind of event happened here. Of course, as in Kursk Duga, there were two other parts of that. There was northern and southern, and in some places the enemy advanced and pushed a little further. But here is the sign of a transition, even though in some parts near Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, they're still pushing. In military intelligence, they're saying that the future is already visible. You just have to see the signs, and this is a good sign. This is a tasty as a good steak sign that the enemy is starting to exhaust themselves. And of course, there'll be more fighting. And by the way, Melitopol is also, as our people are telling, they're preparing defensive lines. Yes, we confirm that too, and that's the right thing to do for them in their current position. So them in general, through that operative pause, they're going to transfer to defensive stance on the front. We understand why is this happening. They really are out of resources and power to advance. And it's really unclear what would they continue the push for. To put down another 20, 30,000 people and then run back? The logic is starting to be clear, and as I wrote before, they were starting to move their troops from Kherson through Russia to the main areas of attack from Kharkiv, not Kherson. Oh, yes. So from Kharkiv, yeah, through Russia, they're pulling the troops back and relocating them to the main positions. Do you think that overall it does look like they're going to change the border of those DNR and LNR fake republics and declare that new border to be a new geographical divide? And also, plus Kherson, Melitopol, they might put their flag there and say, give it to us. And we can be careful with our prognostications here, because, you know, who knows. There's another piece of news here that not many people pay attention to. Alexander Nevzorov today noticed it with his talent. He said an interesting thing, that there haven't been any Lend-Lease yet. But Russians have taken off their troops from the fourth big city they were sieging before. So with the forces of Ukrainian military, we deblocked 4 major cities in our country: Kiev, Sumy, Chernigov, and Kharkiv. Kharkiv is still, they're reaching it with some long-range artillery, but in general, our troops, Ukrainian troops, prevailed over what is considered to be second army in the world, Russian army, and pushed them back. And what will happen when Lend-Lease will be here in full force? What it does, it tells us about their capabilities and our capabilities. And the question is, what will happen? What will be happening when Lend-Lease equipment will be here full force? Because right now we're really mostly infantry with a little bit of mechanized armor. We managed to destroy their tank battalions. What happens if we get the proper battalions, the proper brigades with armor, with tanks? So now I'll tell you what may happen. They're fortifying their positions, and they will be asking you, what, are you going to shoot at our cities? You're going to kill the peaceful citizens? You know, kind of like they did. But that's what they do. They scream back very loud. They'll be screaming about Kherson, Melitopol, Donetsk. What are you doing? You're animals, sadists. How can you do it? We will not actually shoot the cities. We showed it back in 2014 that we don't attack or siege the cities. We just maneuver around and force them to leave or quit. Yeah, well, you mean that you'll surrender a city and surround the city and cut their lines and they'll withdraw? Yeah, we'll make enough efforts around them that they will understand it's better for them to leave before getting encircled. Sings a pop song about a circle ring. All right. So, as I see it, they might actually fortify themselves in the cities or near civilians on purpose. to basically use them as cover. You know, that's logical. A medical facility, a birthing center, or a kindergarten. Yeah, we understand that, but we know how to get them. And they still need to move their columns, their supply lines, and you cannot be moving that maternity ward next to a supply line for miles and days. So there'll be times when they'll be vulnerable. See, we somehow freed, by now it's what, 1,051 populated settlements, small, medium, different sizes, but in general about 1,000. And there'll be more we can free in the same manner. They'll be screaming, they'll be, calling for different kinds of help or attention. But yeah, we know how to do that. I think the peak of our capabilities will be closer to July. The thing is, our peak will be supplied with the Western armor and weapons. Their peak will be with equipment that was taken from dusty warehouses, put there back in the 60s of the last century. And we now have 2 criminal cases being prosecuted for jet pilots, for the planes that were bombing our cities. And we have more. We have about 44 people in the pipeline for that procedure. Out of good news, and I cannot say good, they're probably effective news, because killing even the enemy is not good. It's elimination. So from effective news, we destroyed a command center, probably even higher than the one in Kherson region before. And when we hit it, their ammunition was exploding for about 3 hours after that hit. So it was a big command post with a lot of ammo next to it. Last battle, just a little bit. We're almost there. Words of a famous song. So you heard somebody said you can mobilize about 1 million people in Ukraine? See, that's not a problem. We can probably get 5 more million if we need to. I might actually open one of the government mysteries here, military secrets here. Right now, we have a much bigger army than we started the war with. And we have a lot more people in line. All we need is really more weapons. Speaking of, Ukrainian weaponry is starting to be highly sought items on the world market. We already have 4 countries looking for some of the items that we've used this war. Another side of that is that we are occupying the markets, and Russia is losing the markets on the weapon market. Those countries that traditionally were using Russian weaponry are now looking at this disaster here in Ukraine and are saying that we don't really want to continue buying it because it does not seem to be as effective as it was advertised. And they start to draw comparisons between Russian vehicles and Russian weapons and looking for maybe more expensive but more effective weaponry elsewhere. So that's another part of a thing. As long as the country is buying your weaponry, they are likely to be loyal to you or be supportive of you, because they will never fight against you, because if you stop supply of weaponry, they really are at a loss. So usually they're somewhat of your remote allies, those countries that are buying your weapons. And this is another aspect of tectonic changes that are happening in the world in regards to Russian Federation, or many aspects thereof. And the sanctions continue. They're also targeting military production and military factories. And Lavrov already said that in a statement that the West has declared a total war against us, and we will fight back. We accept the challenge. The thing is, what I want people in Kremlin and people in the world to understand, in reality, the pendulum of consequences for Russian Federation from this war is just started to move in that direction. It will be in full-fledged when Russia will be out of their current troops and Ukraine will be at the peak of Lend-Lease equipment.
Вот сейчас уже очень многие штатные российские пропагандисты заныли военные. Ну как так можно? Ну и добило.
So you can already see in some of the Russian speakers, Russian of talking heads on TV, especially DNR, LNR, some of the people from there are already screaming that they're losing too many people, the leaders are talentless, and they're losing people for nothing. But these are the first people who already can analyze military situation. Although they're propagandists for Russia, they already can see certain things happening. So they already are the first ones to scream about that. The actual consequences have not really started yet. The immediate situation is that out of 10 Russian armies, 4.5 are already destroyed. You cannot really mobilize all the enemies, all the population in your country. There'll likely be a revolt. You cannot use nukes on this war because that'll probably escalate things further and pit you against the whole world. And you'll be running out of heavy weaponry by midsummer, towards the end of it. At the same time, the economic sanctions will start finally pacing everything else, so people will start feeling it. So I was asked today, how do you think Russia will live through that catastrophe? Do you think they'll just think about some remote, faraway losses in an unknown war? No, I don't think so. That's what I said. I think it'll be a classic defeat in the war. It means that every Russian, except for those who were against the whole adventure from the beginning and were trying to prevent it or screaming or protesting against it, then everybody else will be living through a moral, political, and economic catastrophe. That pendulum is just starting to move in that direction. They already see some consequences. And those people who can think, even on the other side of the front, they already are trying to raise alarms. Russian military market will shrink in the world. Russia will lose a lot of geopolitical positions in the world. There'll likely be a leprosy barrack that, that nobody wants, or smallpox barrack that nobody wants to approach. And it'll be a big tragedy for a lot of people who will realize at some point that everything they believed in was not true. Everything they were told from the TV was not true. And it'll be the individual catastrophe for many of them, or most of them, when the regime catastrophe will convert into personal and moral catastrophe for people. Especially for those who are screaming that Russia has to go forward, meaning Kremlin. Because in reality, Kremlin and Russia are very different things.
И вот их ждет каждого персонального жутчайшая, страшная моральная катастрофа, которая подбирается.
So, those people who will prepare for that morally, beforehand, they likely will fare better, especially if they listen to our show. We're trying to prepare them for that, because it will not be just 1 year or 1 season. It likely will be years of bad news for them. This will be their payment for supporting
Putin's
Putin's regime, and they've been approving of a lot of things that he was doing. Many of them don't understand the degree of that frustration. They're still somewhat in denial. They imagine that something is happening out there that other people do not see, that there is a magic secret victory out there that will be announced. It is like a snake, and it will come to them at some point. And they can imagine that something is not like that, but most people... And they're talking about having nukes. You know, North Korea also has nukes. Maybe. Doesn't help them much. So, Budanov, the head of military intelligence in Ukraine, did leak the information that Putin, or did release the information that Putin may have blood cancer. He did not say blood cancer. I think he said oncology in general. Okay, so imagine that he has oncology and he needs a surgery and other things or complications. Even if he does not have it, even if there is no oncology, regardless of that, to denounce that statement, Putin needs to somehow show that it is really, you notice, it's really difficult to denounce such an accusation. Like, you need to show what, bench pressing something heavy, or you need to show your urine test. So that idea is the one that keeps growing, and the West kind of chases it right now to make it painful for him daily and make it real hard for him to denounce or disprove that accusation. It creates additional moral and psychological level of attack on him, with far-fledged consequences, like the soldier might not want to go and die for the leader who will not be around much longer. Would you comment that? Because, you know, it could be a information war. We have some data that about a week ago, Putin's office called for a special medical service late at night. Yeah, emergency vehicle was flying or driving real fast to his house, to his mansion. So something might have been happening there, and you can just look at him, look at his face, with his speech during the last parade in Russia. His face looked different, the way he was holding his hands, the way he was preserving or saving one of his feet while walking, kind of dragging it also. What is important in these situations is an exit strategy, especially when you're pressing up on somebody. So, what is an exit strategy? Biden said that this man is not ours, we don't need him. And basically what it means that Putin must go. So, Russian army, Russian management, Russian oligarchs are also being advised that same solution, that the key to changing everything is to get rid of Putin.
Ну, мы говорили об этом, потому что для них это стратегия выживания, смена режима в России, когда вернутся такие, как Фейгин, во главе Легиона Свободной России, там же разговор.
Because, you know, his close circle will be fighting over everything at some point. You know, there's only one exit for the failed leader in Russia. Feet first. Or through a death penalty. So here is another motive around them, that you are aggregating and supporting one mortally wounded or mortally ill person. You're not really looking at the future. What is your exit strategy? When he is young and healthy and all, understandable, you could play North Korea and consolidate around him and, fight against the whole world. But what happens when he dies? Yeah, you'll cry for a day or two. What will start happening after?
Марк, что начнет происходить, когда все
Мы это видели. Товарищ Сталин спит.
Send the vehicle, and when the generals, referring to the events when generals and Stalin inner circle did not, were afraid to come into his room to confirm his death, and he was laying there in a puddle of pee for at least a couple of days. So there will be not sure if there'll be a full revolt upstairs in Russia, or it'll be a more peaceful arrangement, but likely there'll be somebody like Patrushev who will grab power in a short term. And after which there'll be a different power, they'll come to different group of people, they'll come to power, hopefully more liberal. And even if these people like Patrushev and Shoigu remain in power, they do not have anything to escalate the war with. They have literally no perspectives, except for nukes, but again, that's not a solution for this war. So that regime after Putin might continue existing for a week, two. After that, who wins? It'll be people who are targeting the return or hoping for the return of Russia to the world market. So there'll be likely a lot of trade-offs and negotiations and stuff, but that likely will be a team that wants to be open and that want to be involved with the world market. And they'll likely be negotiating and, offering explanations that you misunderstood. Putin was a horrible ruler. It was not us. It'll start reminding another brilliant Soviet movie, To Kill the Dragon. So now we can look at it. What do our military say after the knight chopped one of the dragon's heads off? That he lost his head? No, that's not how we say that. We say that one of his heads resigned because of the health concerns. So that's likely what's going to be happening in Russia for a while. There'll be like a cascade fall after one thing breaks. It might remind you the 1918 situation in Russia with Tsar family, when it was going slowly, step by step at first, and then just whooshed down, fell out of the window, and progressed crazy fast. So smart people would be preparing for that situation right now. As a proverb, prepare the sleigh in summer.
А загодя готовиться это очень просто. Это вступать в коалиции с российской оппозицией. Это идти на Запад, договариваться.
So the ones who are really caring about the economy in Russia and the future might be in a good position to start talking to the West at the moment, maybe through some secure channels, but at least approach and start discussing what can they offer.
Цитирую 17 весны, какие лозунги вы предложите российскому народу? И так далее. Какая у вас программа политическая, экономическая? Вот это хотелось бы узнать. И
And one needs to understand here that those emissaries from Putin who went to negotiate with France and other countries in the world, that is not going to be easy for them, because some countries already announcing full support to Ukraine, like Britain.
Но эта программа, она немножко расходится с программой Орбана.
But the program Russia is offering them to sign, even Hungary, it is different from their own agenda.
Из этой позиции стоит 40% венгерских избирателей, не меньше. То же самое в Германии. Германия одни говорят, ну мы подумаем, так это сложно, давайте сделаем какое-то заявление.
Even if the official Germany, for example, says that it's difficult, it's hard for us to make a decision, give us some time, we'll review that and then approve. In the meantime, people are cutting corners there and finding ways to continue. So the thing is, how I see these emissars, there'll be either a second wave of them when these fail, or these will, repaint themselves and start working. If you can ask question, what will happen with Russia after Putin? And one also needs to consider Ukraine, that is also part of that conversation. And everything around this war will bump into Crimea, into Donbass. And those people who are still smart, who have not lost their analyzing capacity, they need to start thinking how the Russia would be working after him. Because Putin's regime is technically done. His time is gone. We are living in post-Putin's time. It's just a physical question of him releasing his body from his presence. And wise people should be looking at the future and thinking about the actions that may help to balance the country or keep it stable during the turbulent transition, because Putin's history is gone. In half a year, 1 year, 2 at most, it will not happen. Well, we have about 430,000 people watching us. By the way, it is the final of Eurovision now. It's a European music contest. Despite war, right? How many people are watching final? I think we're maybe better. We are over 400,000. We might be more interesting than Eurovision this year. And of course, dear viewers, share the links, post them on your social media, post everywhere you see fit. Subscribe to Olexiy's channel, to Feygin Live, and to the Privateer Station if you're watching that in English. We are trying to keep up with all the releases they make, and there are more shows to translate. And I see some people asking about yesterday practice of Putin's funeral. That did not happen. Andrei Kosovich disappeared. We're waiting for him to resurface. We suspect we know who took him. It is difficult to work in opposition from within Russia. So let's see. Today also Zelensky signed a document banning any pro-Russian party in his country. This is a good segue to return to collaborative efforts on the occupied territories. The smaller level, people will figure it out on places. But about Kiev, Shari, and the bigger level ones who were participating in pro-Russia party, are there any sanctions we might or could use against them? Maybe, at least if Britain announces that. Yeah, did you hear there's going to be sanctions against Alina Kabaeva, Putin's last mistress, in sixth package?
При всем, да, там, злодейском очаровании шария, где шарии, где там Путин, да, это же очень разные вещи. G7 занимается...
So I want to say that Shari's party, the guy who was arrested in Spain and then released, but he's still being investigated, his party was very active in Ukraine, very active pro-Russian party before the war.
Поэтому, как бы,
After the war, whenever
очевидно, это, в свою очередь,
they were
означает полное
disbanded,
переформатирование политического поля Украины.
our forces did a raid on their facilities to make sure they don't have
становится
anything.
электоратов Юго-Востока, так называемый, который у нас всегда есть. Куда
So now there's after his party is disbanded effectively and supported with materials now, with a legal document,
думать на тему,
he'd be at a serious crossroads trying to figure where should he take his party now, or how to rebrand it. Those people who voted for him, what and how will they be involved in the life of the country after this war? I do suspect that actually one day after this war, this country,
вопрос, кто как будет голосовать. В общем, нам предстоят тектонические перемены, сопоставимые с.
and very likely this war will leave a deep scar on us as well. Ukraine will never be the same ideologically, electorally. We're still looking for a suitable picture of the future that we'll stand with, because during this time, one very important thing happened. We changed one of the leading archetypes on the country from the victim to a hero. We have not won yet, so we have not done the victory archetype, but we at least picked up the hero. Because for the last 300-400 years, Ukraine was always a loser in a bunch of battles, in a bunch of political situations. So now we're going through working these archetypes, and whenever we transition to the offensive operation, that's when we adopt the stance of the victor. This will affect a lot of things in the country during and post. We, in the meantime, have not yet finalized where do we want to go, but we are quite sure in understanding what do we not want to happen or where do we not want to go. But in any case, at least we realize that we found the cohesive element for us, which is will. Will in Ukraine, voля. The word has two meanings. One of them is freedom, another is the will to act, to live, to do things. And there are many things to improve. One of them is we're trying to be more open, more effective. Some things that you need half a day in the other country to start a company, register, transfer money. Here, everything can be done online. So we're trying to be very modern. It will come to a new picture very soon.
А кроме того, мы же Израилем не ограничимся, потому что у нас есть влияние, но мы не сможем, мы Киев.
We are a big country, one of the biggest countries in Europe, and there are some rumors on the Slavic, some of the stories on the Christian front about Saint Andrew, who came to us and was working with our ancestors. So, but in any case, this war is something that starts a lot of processes in the subconsciousness of our citizens. Because, in my opinion, Moscow power is sort of like a cancer and has been for several hundred years. The idea of a free Russia was trampled by the horde back in the medieval times. Now that big cycle is closing. So if you ask the people who are more connected with art and finer energy, they will be digging out metaphorical and old historic figures of lords of Kiev, knyaz of old Slavic Kievan Rus, that was fighting against Mongol horde back in the day and lost back in the day. But right now, there is an interesting connection with that archetype that's happening, and that is looking into the future and trying to fix old mistakes. So I hope in 10 years we will not recognize Eastern Europe. And I do hope that it'll take a different place in the world. It'll be a much more prominent position. At least on the psychological, metaphysical, philosophical level, a lot of issues are closing now. A lot of issues we had problems before between Ukraine and Poland, they're closing. People are not fighting, bickering between each other. Moldavia is graduating. Belarus is another key to things happening around. And perhaps in Russia it may take longer, but they also will go through their tectonic processes. And maybe later somebody will say, thank you, Vlad, because he kind of served as a catalyst for the whole situation. And maybe 15 years, 10 years from now, we'll raise a glass in his name, because through him there is a big change coming to the world. And he did start, if you remember, with a metaphysical premise that Ukraine is part of Russia or sub-whatever Russia. And it has changed. It completely backfired in a different way. So, thank you. That is an interesting take on things. 450-ish thousand people watching us. Are we meeting tomorrow again? Yes, of course. I'm reminding all our viewers once again that we are still posting works, NFT Works in the OpenSea. There's a link under this show. We're posting things there for bidding, so whoever wins pays the money, and that's how we collect money to give to those cases that we choose to support. And as we said, that's the fund that we'll be distributing through Ukraine to the families who suffered extensively. So yeah, there is another boy that and his family that we're looking to get in touch with, so we'll keep you updated. And we also ask the painters and the digital artists to submit their works to that NFT auction. Communicate with us, send emails to feiginlive@gmail.com.
Пожалуйста, на feiginlive@gmail.com присылайте свои работы, как это делают многие. Ну что,
Olexiy, we thank you again for your participation in this webcast, and we'll see tomorrow how the situation changes. Everybody, thank you and have a good night. Good luck.